Welcome to the battle of all time, Heroscape. Embark in a journey of destruction and death to kill or be killed. Assemble your terrain.
Yeah!
Roll the dice.
Yeah, all skulls!
Annihilate your enemies.
Yeah, it's the battle of all time!
Draft dragons, dwarves, polar bears, or whatever the hell else. Fight epic battles in Heroscape today.
This is the reprinted Heroscape, the battle of all time. Whatever the heck that means. Yes, this is a giant throwback to the original Heroscape from 2004, the pre-painted miniatures game with freaking 3D terrain that you can make endless amounts of maps with. So now we have Heroscape Age of Annihilation Master Set, where Renegade Games has partnered with Avalon Hill of a Hasbro licensed game, now with an unpainted cheaper version for about $125, which we bought because nostalgia, right? In Heroscape, you just command an army of all time to defeat your opponent's army of all time. They just duke it out because these armies are just a mishmash of a bunch of different worlds. In here, we have a giant dragon, pirates, cyberpunk dwarves, and these crazy evil Valkyrie women. You move figures up and down the map, noting terrain, and then roll dice to attack and defend. Yeah, this game is ridiculously simple for a miniatures game. It's almost as much of a toy as it is a game. Maybe? Well, we'll get into it being kind of a toy. I mean, this game is also the same system as the original system from 20 years ago. This is an old system. And lastly, it's about 60 to 120 minutes. We played this master set 3 times at 3 different scenarios, and I played it probably a dozen times growing up with the Storm of the Marro. You can play it 2 to 4 players, but we'll talk about it mostly 1v1, which is how most people I'd imagine will be playing this. How to play. By the way, this is for the master game, not the basic game. The master game is just more complicated. Kill your opponent, that's the goal. Kill them, wipe them off the map, obliterate them. At least that's the de facto win condition. You can also play included scenarios that ask you to do other things, like controlling a plateau after a period of time, or killing certain enemy units. Anyways, to usually kill, each player has an army they've drafted. Note the army costs on the bottom corner. Once drafted, you deploy them on the scenario spawn zone, and once you've reached your point limit, the game begins. First, you'll assign order tokens secretly, which is what order your units are going in that round. One's a fake one to throw off your opponent, so you only have 3 unit turns per round. Then you roll for initiative to see who goes first with a d20. When it's your turn, you take the mini that's activated, then move, then attack. That's it, it's that simple. So for movement, you move up to your move value, and if there's higher elevation, it costs 1 more extra to move up each level. Here it costs 2 extra movement to jump up. There's usually no penalty to moving down unless you have a big fall, but that depends on your unit size, we won't explain that yet. Then for attacking, you just attack an enemy in your range, so for here it's 1 for an adjacent attack, and you just roll dice equal to your attack value. You see how many skulls you get, then your opponent rolls dice equal to their defense value, see how many shields they get. The difference between skulls and shields is damage they take. And yeah, that's pretty much the game. Units have special abilities, but we'll get into those later. Once the round ends of all order markings being resolved, you just reassign them and roll for initiative. That's the battle of all time.
Heroscape.
Pros! First we talk about components, and yeah, that's a big reason why you play Heroscape. The minis are all great quality, like they feel very sturdy and solid. We did have to use a boiling water trick to make sure the dragon tail went in, but after that, yeah, it felt super duper sturdy on the board. The walls and monuments are all nice quality too. They're easy to assemble and take apart. They just slide into each other. And terrain, that's Heroscape. This is a big part of the magic of Heroscape, the hex tiles that can slot in with each other and basically infinitely stack. They're so easy to move around and have great color distinction. They look really good on camera, by the way, and it just really facilitates you being able to make your own maps. I swear these used to be higher quality 15-ish years ago when I played, but the terrain definitely still gets the job done with no hassle. That gets us right into gameplay pros, and we have to start with the terrain. Not only does it look unique, but it adds a decent amount of gameplay and immersion without being complicated, ever. The way they enforced height was simple, so you just have to factor in the height of units moving, and then the relation to each other when walking up and down for fighting. Height only gives dice in combat where the attacker gains a die or the defender will gain a die depending on who's higher. It all is just very simple, feels good, roll more during Ameritrash. And the inclusion of water to stop movement allows for variation in maps for those hard to cross streams or lakes. And it's nice that it's lowered with a flat texture and a little bit shiny too to feel more like water. This goes into how Heroscape does a good job of enforcing size into everything during gameplay. Like what you see really matters, which further helps immersion. For example, units literally cannot go where their piece cannot. So if you look at this dragon, he literally cannot stand in this cavern here, or this canyon. He can't do it. You can't see it happen, so you can't do it. Look at all these illegal spaces, but he can be like that, because he's so big, it's unwieldy. Or short units actually get benefits because they can go under overhangs. Yes, it's extremely sick that overhangs are possible with this 3D terrain system. This is tied together into a very simple and clear line of sight ruling. You can see what's actually hittable for each unit on its actual unit card, and then just draw a line from the unique dot placement on the attacker. So yes, hiding behind these included walls matters. Then it's neat how you have glyphs to spice up the maps, which are these magical spaces that can give you some permanent or temporary benefits as your units go on them. These also make the maps interactable, and the units can be placed in a hard to walk to place that makes units walking to them vulnerable. It's cool how in some of the included maps, each team has their own glyphs to benefit from, so you can position carefully to take them from your opponent for an advantage. This master set apparently has some new glyphs for the Heroscape universe, like moving 3 of your other units 5 spaces, or this one just deletes any glyph on the board, or this one prevents you from getting attacked when disengaging from enemies. Oh yeah, disengaging! That's another gameplay pro, so let's talk about that disengage mechanic. So this is where, if a unit tries to move out of the melee range of another enemy unit, the thing running away gets attacked, which is just rolling 1 die no matter what the units are, and there's no defense check. This is a neat little inclusion to do these attacks of opportunity without bogging down the gameplay into a ton of dice rolling upon anything moving. If you have a bunch of units, all you do is just roll 1 die per thing. And it's good that Heroscape has these disengagements with squads, where you have a bunch of squads so you can use them to position them carefully around your opponent's enemy heroes to threaten free attacks. So then your opponent positions their heroes so that this doesn't happen. And if they do get surrounded by squads, well, they're weighing running away with the free attack risk or just spending time to kill the squads before moving. So now we get to the units, and they all feel unique from one another in this set. All 11 of them are cool in their own way. First, there's a big screw you dragon who can fly, so ignores terrain height, and also has the strongest standard attack of rolling 6 dice. Since she can just fly to higher terrain, she can easily have her strongest attack be 7 dice. She has a chain lightning attack to attack multiple enemies, kind of like Sith lightning, rolling 1 less dice after the first, so you can attack up to 4 things in a turn with that. She can also put down these vine glyphs on the board that will debuff opponents standing on them, then maybe weaken them as they move through it. And remember, size matters, so her being so big could be painful depending on your map. Knight Irene is way more straightforward, just a great statted strong unit. It's cool that they fitted the polar bear idea for her to run, to sacrifice some attack strength for a turn to move 3 more, so 7 movement, holy cow. Or these yo-ho-ho pirates who have black gunpowder to become ranged. And they have this stealthy ability where if they're attacked by opponent's figure with a ranged attack, if they roll a 13 or higher, they take no damage and just move away. Okay, we're not gonna cover all the units, but let's do one more. This cyborg admiral who can shoot 4 times on a single turn, because he has 4 arms each holding a gun. It's also nice that I included units of all shapes and sizes in this game, so you can potentially play around mixing small units. The big dudes also have the advantage in surviving falls easier, as you compare their size number to their height. And now for one of the boons of Heroscape that 12-year-old me really liked, so this could be a great Christmas present for me, is that this game is really replayable. So this box comes with 4 maps for 9 different scenarios to play. And if you don't want to do the basic mode, then you still got 6 master set scenarios to play. And you can play either side in some of the scenarios with their pre-assigned armies. Even one of the later scenarios we had poisoned water, so there's a chance you take damage when landing on it, which straight up killed most of Alexander's 1 HP squad army, haha. Or just forget the scenarios, just take the map apart and just make your own maps. That is the, come on. You get the point. You can infinitely move this around. That's the Heroscape charm. There's pretty much an infinite amount of combos you can do with the big and small hexagonal lumps. I remember trying really flat maps as a kid on the floor, and the next game we'd play on a huge mountain. Or if you buy other Heroscape sets, you can have so much terrain, it's really infinite in what you can make. The last pro is that Heroscape just runs really true to time. Now I've seen online that Heroscape is a whole day affair, but if you're playing the scenarios in this box, it really is 1 to 2 hours, including setup and takedown. That's because the terrain is so easy to move around, and the mechanics are so simple that you're not getting bogged down by rules or phases while playing. It's just really reveal order, move, attack, roll dice. Rinse and repeat until one army's dead. Minis are frequently dying off attacks because the game favors attacking, so the board clears real fast. Cons. Component cons. This box provided is not very good quality. It's always been like this. Like, look at me putting this box into that box where it came in. I mean, it's not gonna break, but it's not great feeling cardboard. While there is an insert for the minis and some of the terrain, there's no solution for the big terrain. So just chuck it into the box. Woohoo, that's it. It's gonna be sliding around for sure. Not sure if the previous Heroscapes came with any insert at all. I remember mine not having one, but usually people just end up storing their Heroscape in plastic bins, so I guess the developers noted this and just continued to skimp out on storage. So now for components that mess with gameplay, the unit text is extremely wordy, with no bolding or italicizing or even symbols. It feels like the game went out of their way to make special attacks feel way more complicated than they actually are. Like, look at all of these sentences! And when it references other factions like Revna or Uldgar, at least put the symbol or color. Also, components show their age and that there's no included player aid, which, yeah, okay, the gameplay is not that complicated, but still, it'd be nice to have something to show you about how order markers work or how terrain moving works. And it'd be especially nice to have something to explain all these glyphs, which we had to keep referencing the rulebook for. Let's talk about the rulebook. It has no table of contents, glossary, or index, which is very annoying to read. Like when we were looking for keywords like flying, you gotta look through the entire book. Oh, also another thing that really confused us, what the heck is a captain? There's a squad unit called the Knaves of the Silver Scimitar that elect a unique captain that gives huge benefits. But what the heck is a unique captain? We were looking at the left of cards for unique captain and couldn't find it. Then the rulebook has nothing, even online doesn't have a solid response. The ruling we settled on is that you can elect any non-squad as a captain, but in truth we have no idea. And more on these knaves later.
They will obey.
Now we can get to the map assembly in the books. They will sometimes straight up request colors you don't have to make the map. I thought I was going crazy thinking I lost pieces, but no, we checked the component list and they don't give you enough components to place some of the one of pieces. I mean, it doesn't really matter too much because there's nothing we've seen that strictly interacts with grass versus sand versus stone much, so you can just swap out the color. But I'm telling you, to save time, do not scramble to look for the correct piece and thinking you're crazy. Because no, I'm not crazy, they're crazy, they messed up thing. I didn't mess up, I didn't lose a piece. Okay, let's talk about theme now. That is, this box has really weird theming. That is, I dare say, it doesn't really have one you can put your finger on. Like, they're trying with flavor text of the backstory of Valhalla and individual backstories, but if you sit down and think about it, it's just really absurd, it makes no sense. It's just straight up throwing things together. Okay, so there's steampunk pirates, then cyberpunk pirates, then armored polar bears. Now there's an undead looking dragon, because that's original, I guess. Let's just keep going. A cyberpunk dwarf, who's a pirate with a chain axe. There's a bunch of Valkyrie warriors called Kyrie. The setting and theme just isn't grounded in anything, which makes it difficult to say what this game is about. The closest thing is probably Marvel, where you just have a bunch of different characters from different timelines jumping into portals, and now, bam, suddenly they're all fighting each other now. But now it's dialed up because you have way more different types of dragons and dwarves and polar bears. It's like if you were to take a bunch of American action figures from Transformers, G.I. Joe, Pirates of the Caribbean, and throw them all together, that's this box. It's just really hard to take seriously. And yes, we do recognize there is a certain charm of combining these different genres and themes yourself. That is, you get to decide what goes together to create this weird mishmash melting pot of identities. These are things that you already like. Whereas in Age of Annihilation, it's just a bunch of random characters and they just say go. Okay, I don't have any connection to any of these. And it's gonna be hard to build that connection because they're just so jumbled. Oh yeah, assortment of characters. That gets us into the draft. It feels gimped. There's just not enough synergies, even though it might seem like there's a lot because you do get 11 different units. You have these polar bear squad dudes that can have one blue hero go before them. Well, there's only one blue hero in the box. Same with Miserex, the Kyrie warrior. When she dies, you can give a benefit to another warrior hero that follows Revna. Well, it turns out there's only one other hero you can target, but she's not even a warrior, so there's no other unit you can target. Woohoo. Then the dragon has a really wonky fit in the draft because it's 200 army points. But scenarios cap out at 400 army points, so it's really risky to draft. But let's go into a 400 army point example. So say you draft the dragon first, then your opponent drafts second, where they get 2 units. So they take the 2 other best units. Then you have like 1 to 2 other decent options, then they draft. And then you basically have no points left to get a 3rd unit. So maybe you can just get like a bad 3rd unit, and it's often a bad fit, and you can almost never get a 4th unit. So maybe you draft the dragon in the 2nd round of draft? Maybe? 200 army points in this box is just too high. Either there should be more low-cost units to draft after you draft this dragon, or make this dragon cheaper. That gets us right into balance, because squads are exceptionally good in this set. So squads are a unit where you get 4 minis as opposed to 1 mini for a hero. And while each squad only has 1 to 2 HP, their stats in this set are just as good as hero units. The counterplay against squads is to obviously use area effect abilities, but there's only one area effect ability in the set, with the dragon that is again clunky to draft. The squads to really pinpoint though are the knaves, who are just really overpowered. They first select their captain, which again we ruled, because there's no ruling on it, to be any unit. So every time you activate these knaves, you're getting 2 turns. You're getting their captain and then the knaves go. We love being twice as strong on our turns. The knaves also get this bonus of +1 damage every time they move into range that turn to do the attack, which is pretty much all the time in this game. You're moving, then attacking. So then they're often rolling 4 dice to attack. Compare this to this tree guy who rolls 3 dice to attack, and then lets you take a turn with a smaller medium beast before he takes his turn. Well, guess what? There's no smaller medium beast in this set. Lastly, the knaves don't ever get punished for disengagement, that is moving out from being adjacent and in combat to something else, which is such an easy way to try to do 1 damage, which is good against squads, typically. Yeah, either have these knaves be more expensive to draft or have less squad members, or just have 2 copies so players can both have these overpowered guys. It's Heroscape, so it's meant to be expandable, so balance isn't a huge deal. So now let's end gameplay cons with an umbrella of points that all fall under Heroscape is just victim to a lot of old, clunky Ameritrash faults. First is how there's a capacity for wasting parts of turns, because you must always first move, then attack. So okay, if you're surrounded and don't want to or can't move, you're straight up railroaded to only attacking. Do you want to attack then move? Too bad, you can't. They could have let you move and then attack in any order like any other modern Ameritrash game, but no, they wanted to keep the game the same, the system's the same, which probably makes sense if you factor in that there's so many heroes and characters in this game that would have to be retuned if you change the rules like that. Second clunkiness is how there's capacity for death spiraling once you fall behind, where if you lose a turn because the unit that was assigned an order marker dies, well, that's horrible. But I mean, that's just kind of how the game is. Too bad you lost a turn. Whereas modern games usually wouldn't punish you this hard or let you move order markers or something. Whatever, it's Heroscape. Third point is how the combat system has really little agency. So yes, there is agency in positioning on the board, as we said in the pros. Positioning is important. But then when you roll the dice, there's really nothing to affect it. There's no cards, there's no saving of rerolls. It's pretty much just chuck and go. Your result is your result. This makes it feel exceptionally bad when you roll all misses. Not saying that rolling all misses is inherently bad, but happens all the time in games with combat. It's just that it feels worse in Heroscape because that's the only thing you did that turn. Just pick up dice and roll. Lastly, let's talk about the initiative system, that is whoever goes first in a round. And this has extreme variance for being such an important thing. All it is just rolling a d20. You just roll to see who goes first, who gets that first attack, and look at this dice distribution on the attacking dice. Really good to attack. In fact, going first is so good, especially if you went last the previous round, so you can have 2 uninterrupted turns, which is absurd. Kid you not, half of the game's outcomes hinged on the second round of whoever went first, since everyone was in a position to attack. Scoring! Now it's time for a recommender score, but first we got a word in from... This video is brought to you by Box King Gaming, a board game bookshelf to store your games horizontally without stacking. We've now happily replaced our old bookshelf, so if you want to take a look, use our link below for 10% off and help support the channel. Heroscape Age of Annihilation is a reprint of a much beloved old Ameritrash system of a ton of miniatures and dice chucking. You have very simple rules and 3D terrain. And so by weighing our aforementioned pros and cons, this is going to get it's a 5 out of 10. It's just average. Kid you not, the recommended score was initially a 7 out of 10 for this because, well, who cares about the cons? It's Heroscape, right? Who cares if it's a bit silly mechanically? Who cares if the units aren't perfectly synergized? Who cares about balance? You got the cool units and the terrain. But the more I thought about it, the more this set just gets really thwarted when you start looking at it from different angles. One angle is that the more I thought about it, this specific master set, Age of Annihilation, is just not a good master set. Like, it doesn't have a coherent theme, unlike something like Swarm of the Marro, which actually had more squad units to experiment with armies with. Or how Age of Annihilation doesn't really have interesting terrain outside of walls, which no unit in the box strictly interacts with. Or how the draft isn't very good and kind of predatory, which we'll return to. Upon some quick research, this HasLab Hasbro Pulse crowdfunding page is what was originally supposed to be an Age of Annihilation, but it never got funded, so it got taken down. And now it's back in what looks like half the content, maybe less, via Renegade Games. So yeah, this fails when comparing it to other Heroscape master sets. Problem is, those master sets aren't viable anymore. The second angle for Heroscape is that it's 2025, and for what looks like nostalgia's sake, yeah, it's the same exact system that was in 2004. Heroscape isn't a miniatures experience I can actively recommend, but I don't not recommend it either. It's just okay because it's very accessible. Hence, it's another reason to be a 5 out of 10. It's just a very simple miniatures game that doesn't do anything special besides, oh, cool terrain. This gets us into the third angle, which is Heroscape's appeal, and bear with me now, is actually not in that it's really a board game, in that It's actually more of a toy. And so a lot of enjoyment is seeing these minis bash each other. These strong feeling minis, they actually do feel like action figures. And they go up and down the terrain in the worlds that you make. Heroscape just feels like the Hero Quest reprint. It's just full on nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. But at least this set is providing new units aside from just new art. But the new units aren't even implemented very well. And look how old this sounds. At the back of the box we've been chanting again and again, it's the battle of all time. Like that just reads like a troll YouTube comment of saying, oh yeah, this is the board game of all time. Doesn't mean anything. And that's the stakes in Heroscape. They don't mean anything. It's just random dragons and pirates fighting, just cuz. This master set really feels like it suffers from 3 or 4 master sets being jammed into one. Oh, polar bears, oh, throw it in. Valkyries, get that in. Cyberpunk, yes, we need that. Dragons, yeah, kids like that. And then if I were to look at this in 2025 Ameritrash terms, yes, this gameplay's missing a lot. Like they could have added cards for each unit to use to spend your leftover draft points on, or you could be drawing cards throughout the match to surprise your opponent, or you could have a tracker for each player or unit to move up and down to track a resource, and then you could spend resources for rerolling dice or get you more movement. But no, this is Heroscape. That's not what this game is. It's terrain, minis, chuck dice, yay. It's still good at letting you ride that dice chucking high with basically no rules overhead. Will you roll all skulls off getting the height advantage? Will you sacrifice a squad member to get a glyph to shock your opponent? I mean, anything can happen after all. There's a glyph where each unit rolls a d20. And if you roll a 1, like a critical fail, it immediately dies. Like imagine that happening for the dragon you drafted 200 points for. Age of Annihilation is still compatible with the other Heroscape sets, if you have any left. But a sinking suspicion of why the draft is so gimped is to just hook you in to buy more minis, more Heroscape. It's kinda predatory. But seeing how HasLab's initial crowdfunding failed, packaging Heroscape in this kind of gimped way is Heroscape's last gasp at trying to be relevant again. It's easy to understand them wanting to get more sales fast by lowering the price, still giving you these nice minis and terrain and scenarios. So now you're at a little bit over $100 when everything is pretty expensive nowadays, and then just try to sink you in with more ads, like there's an ad at the back of the rulebook. Heroscape has this innocent action hero charm to it, and maybe it's good for board gaming, that this will get people playing more miniature board games. But a pro tip here, if you really want to get Heroscape, just go online and buy used versions of people selling their old master sets.
So I played the original Heroscape back in 2004. So coming back to play this version of Heroscape was like revisiting an old friend, an old drug-addicted alcoholic friend. I would give Heroscape a 3 out of 10. I think it is a bad game. I also think this version of Heroscape is dreadful. Where I do think Heroscape succeeds at is it certainly evokes a feeling of playing other war games or miniatures games. I've played Warhammer 40k and I've played Star Wars Legion, and I think I would never play Heroscape over those games ever. But Heroscape does have a great advantage of being much cheaper, and if you want to get someone into miniatures gaming, like let's say they're a little kid, then I think Heroscape is pretty good, a pretty good toy for them to play with, and they'll get a lot of enjoyment out of it. But when it comes to miniatures games, it's producing the same sort of feelings that you typically associate with miniatures games, like you'll peer down at the board and look through the eyes of the minis and see like, oh, do you really have line of sight? And then your other player will say, no, you don't have line of sight. And you'll say, yes, they do have line of sight. And you'll get into an argument. So that's great. For some reason. You'll be rolling a lot of dice, like all miniatures games. It's got army building, so you can have your little customized fun army that you yourself like. And that's where the pros of Heroscape kind of conclude for me. I mean, it's good that it's a simple game. And I get it, it's not trying to be a complex game. I give it a 3 out of 10 because I just don't like miniatures games in the first place. I think they're bad. I think they're very dependent on random chance. They take a huge amount of time to set up and a long time to play. You know, the juice is not worth the squeeze. I think the theme of this box is one of the worst themes ever possible. It defies human imagination. The story that comes in this box is worse than refuse. It's like it's not even that they're scraping the bottom of the barrel, they're scraping at the dirt underneath the barrel to come up with some sort of cohesive theme here. Obviously, this is all very subjective. I think all the units are really lame and boring. If you think the units in this game are cool, then you'll probably get a lot more enjoyment out of Heroscape, or at least this particular box of Heroscape than I did. I think it was called Rise the Valkyries, the 2004 master set. That one also had a very strange theme. It was like World War II soldiers and militia and like Norse Valkyries fighting robots and these alien bug things. I don't know. So that equally was basically just a bunch of nonsense like thrown in, but that appeals much more to my brain, so I liked it more. I was also really young. I would recommend this game if you are a parent and you are thinking of getting your children into miniatures games. This is a good exploration, but outside of that niche audience, I would recommend this game to literally nobody. I would recommend you actively stay away because it is preying upon nostalgia to make money. This game sucks.
My personal score for Heroscape Age of Annihilation is going to be a 4 out of 10. I have a below average time with it. The terrain is undoubtedly very novel. Still get this feeling of stacking them is feels good. And the matches are ridiculously accessible, so Heroscape will always really thrive on that accessibility. Just chuck dice for me. But it still doesn't really feel like it's worth it, having played so many Ameritrash games and also some Warhammer since I played this game 15 years ago. When I realized that initiatives are just entirely won through D20, which really matters to attack first, I'm like, well, who cares much about strategy for order markers then? If you lose a unit and it had an order marker on it, too bad. You're now down a turn. It's a downward spiral until you lose or get incredibly lucky on a roll. I really feel like I'm just looking forward to chucking dice and getting skulls. There's no downtime because turns are snappy, but there's also not really much to think about. So, which gets us back to the universe, which also isn't much to think about. I don't care about chucking dice for this mishmash of characters, like pirates, then dwarf and Valkyrie. It's so disjointed, but if I was younger, maybe I'd be more willing to accept a mishmash. I don't dislike the theme, I just don't care about it. It's like some random generic car passing you on the street. And again, I'm gonna compare this to the Swarm and the Marro, which I played growing up, which was sick in its presentation. You got the weird Marro Swamp guys versus the Forces of Good, with a freaking base unit that could spawn more guys. It was so gruesome and cool and original feeling. How about the maps? Well, setting up the terrain is pretty cool, technically infinite replayability, but also why bother with the terrain if outcomes don't really matter? I also personally think the game looks really cheesy with the hexes. Also, the plastic just feels kind of cheap. Ultimately, the gameplay peak is still gonna be just rolling a bunch of swords and shields. Skulls and shields. It's just very basic. On my turn, I wanna see red when I attack. All skulls, please. I wanna see red. Red, kill on my turn. Not my turn, I wanna see blue. Blue when defending. I must see blue when defend. Blue is good. Blue to defend, good. And yeah, red versus blue. Maybe you just can't get more accessible than that.